When shy Omega healer, Vera notices the metallic scent of silver poisoning emanating from the seemingly invincible Alpha King, a deadly symptom everyone else dismissed as impossible. She faces an agonizing choice between staying invisible or risking everything to save his life. But what happens when saving the king means exposing a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of the pack, and the shy healer becomes the only thing standing between her mate and a traitor's blade? Blood mixed with morning dew on the cobblestones outside the royal palace gates. Vera Ashwood pressed her face against the cold iron bars, watching as guards carried another injured wolf toward the healing quarters. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird trying to escape. "Move along, Omega," barked Captain Mills, his weathered face twisted with impatience. "Nothing here concerns you." But something did concern her. Something that made her wolf pace restlessly beneath her skin, whimpering warnings that no one else seemed to hear. The wounded wolves all carried the same strange scent metal mixed with decay, like coins left too long in stagnant water. Vera clutched her herb basket tighter and hurried toward the gardens behind the healing quarters. The other healers would laugh at her again if she mentioned her worries. They always did. "Silly Omega," they'd whisper, always imagining problems where none exist. The morning sun struggled through heavy gray clouds as she knelt beside her grandmother's old moonflower patch. These delicate white blooms only opened at night, but their petals held powerful healing magic when picked at dawn. Her fingers worked quickly, gathering the precious flowers before the other healers arrived. "Talking to plants again, little mouse." Vera spun around, nearly dropping her basket. Healy Marcus stood behind her, his tall frame casting shadows across the garden. As head of the healing quarters, he commanded respect from every wolf in the pack, everyone except Vera, who had learned to fear his cold green eyes. "The moonflowers are ready for harvesting," she said quietly, keeping her gaze fixed on the ground. "I didn't give you permission to touch royal plants." Marcus stepped closer, and Vera caught his scent-clean soap mixed with something bitter, like medicine gone bad. "These flowers are reserved for important healing work, not Omega experiments. I've been growing these since I was 12, Vera whispered. Her grandmother had taught her everything about healing herbs before the fever took her 5 winters ago. "My grandmother planted this patch herself." "Your grandmother is dead." Marcus plucked the basket from her hands. "And you're nothing but a low-ranked Omega who thinks she knows better than trained healers." Heat rushed to Vera's cheeks, but she kept her mouth shut. Arguing with Marcus would only bring punishment. Instead, she watched him dump her carefully gathered flowers onto the dirt, crushing the delicate petals under his boot. "Report to the kitchens," he commanded. "Cook needs help preparing meals for the injured wolves. That's work better suited to your abilities." As Marcus strode away, Vera knelt to salvage what remained of her flowers. Most were ruined, but a few perfect blooms had escaped his notice. She tucked them carefully into her apron pocket, her grandmother's voice echoing in her memory. "A true healer sees what others miss, little one. Trust your instincts, even when the world tells you they're wrong." The kitchen buzzed with activity when Vera arrived. Steam rose from enormous pots, while servant Omegas rushed between tables, laden with bread and meat. Cook Helena, a plump woman with kind eyes, waved Vera toward a pile of vegetables waiting to be chopped. "About time," Helena huffed, wiping sweat from her brow. "We've got 30 injured wolves to feed, and half my staff called in sick this morning." Vera picked up a knife and began slicing carrots with practiced ease. Around her, other servants whispered about the recent attacks on patrol groups, strange injuries that wouldn't heal properly. Wolves growing weaker instead of stronger. "My cousin says it's a curse," murmured Penny, another Omega. "Something dark targeting our strongest fighters." "Don't be foolish," snapped Mira, an older beta. "Curses are stories for children. These wolves just need rest and proper medicine." But Vera remembered the metallic scent from the wounded wolves, and her grandmother's warnings about poisons that could fool even skilled healers. She kept chopping vegetables while her mind raced with possibilities. The kitchen door burst open, and 2 guards stumbled inside carrying a stretcher. On it lay a massive wolf in human form, unconscious and bleeding from multiple wounds. Even from across the room, Vera could smell that terrible metallic odor, stronger now, more urgent. "Clear the way," shouted one guard. The Alpha King needs immediate attention. Vera's knife clattered to the floor. The Alpha King? Here in the kitchen instead of the royal healing chambers? She watched as the guards struggled to navigate between tables and cooking fires. The injured ruler's head lolling dangerously close to a pot of boiling soup. "Careful!" Helena shrieked. "You'll burn him!" That metallic smell grew stronger as they passed Vera's station. Up close, she could see the Alpha King's face, strong jaw, dark hair streaked with premature silver, skin pale as moonlight. But beneath the obvious wounds, something else was wrong. Something that made her wolf whine in distress. The guards disappeared through the back door, leading to the healing quarters, leaving behind only whispered prayers and the lingering scent of metal and decay. Vera stared after them, her heart pounding with recognition and dread. She knew that smell now, had read about it in her grandmother's old healing journals, tucked away in the bottom of an ancient trunk. The journals spoke of a poison so rare and deadly that most healers forgot it existed. Silver sickness, the kind that killed slowly, eating away at a wolf's strength from the inside, the kind that could fool even the most experienced healers because its symptoms looked like ordinary battle wounds. And the Alpha King reeked of it. Thunder crashed overhead as Vera crept through the castle's stone corridors 3 hours past midnight. She pressed herself against cold walls, avoiding patches of torchlight that might reveal her presence to the guards. In her hands, she carried a small cloth bag filled with the moonflower petals she'd saved from Marcus's destruction. The healing quarters lay at the far end of the castle, past the great hall where portraits of former Alpha Kings glared down from gilded frames. Vera had never been in this part of the castle after dark, and every shadow seemed to hide watching eyes. A low growl echoed from around the corner ahead. Vera froze, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain the entire castle could hear it. Slow footsteps approached heavy boots on stone, accompanied by the jingle of armor and weapons. She dove behind a marble pillar just as 2 guards rounded the corner, their faces grim in the flickering torchlight. "Still no change," the first guard muttered. "Healer Marcus says the fever's getting worse." "The Pack Council's meeting in the morning," replied his companion, "if the Alpha King doesn't wake soon." Their voices faded as they continued down the hall, but Vera caught enough to understand. The Alpha King was dying, and nobody knew why. Or rather, nobody wanted to admit what they suspected. She waited until their footsteps disappeared completely before emerging from her hiding place. The healing quarters lay just ahead, marked by the warm glow of lamplight spilling from beneath a heavy wooden door. Vera pressed her ear against the door and listened. Inside, she could hear Marcus speaking to someone in hushed tones, probably another healer or maybe one of the royal physicians. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone sounded frustrated, almost angry. "The wound is clean," Marcus was saying. "I've applied every healing salve we have. The infection should have cleared by now. Perhaps we should try bloodletting," suggested another voice, Dr. Thornfield, the royal physician. "Sometimes the old methods work best." Vera's blood ran cold. Bloodletting would only weaken the Alpha King further, especially if he was suffering from silver poisoning. The metal attacked from within, and removing healthy blood would just help it spread faster. She had to do something. But how could a lowly Omega convince the head healer and royal physician that they were wrong? The conversation inside grew quieter, and Vera heard the scrape of chairs being pushed back from a table. They were finishing their discussion, which meant they'd be leaving soon. She pressed herself against the wall beside the door, hoping they wouldn't notice her in the shadows. The door creaked open, and Dr. Thornfield emerged first, a thin man with silver hair and tired eyes. Marcus followed close behind, his face drawn with exhaustion and worry. "I'll return in the morning with fresh supplies," Dr. Thornfield said. "Try to keep the fever down with cold cloths. Beyond that," he shrugged helplessly. "I understand," Marcus replied. "Thank you for coming so late." They parted ways in the corridor, Dr. Thornfield heading toward the guest chambers, while Marcus disappeared in the direction of his own quarters. Vera waited until both sets of footsteps faded before approaching the door. Her hand trembled as she reached for the handle. What she was about to do could get her banished from the pack, or worse. But her grandmother's voice whispered in her memory, "A healer's first duty is to heal, regardless of rank or protocol." The door opened silently on well-oiled hinges. Inside, the healing chamber was larger than Vera had expected, with shelves of bottles and herbs lining the walls. But her attention focused immediately on the massive bed in the center of the room. The Alpha King lay motionless beneath white sheets, his breathing shallow and labored. Even unconscious, he radiated the kind of power that made lesser wolves submit automatically. But up close, Vera could see past the intimidating presence to the man beneath. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30 years old, with laugh lines around his eyes that spoke of happier times. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his strong hands rested peacefully on top of the covers. If not for his pale skin and the sheen of fever sweat on his brow, he might have been sleeping peacefully. But that metallic scent hung around him like a poisonous cloud, confirming Vera's worst fears. She approached the bed slowly, fighting every instinct that screamed at her to flee. Alpha Kings were not meant for Omega touch, especially not Omega healers who had no official training or authority. But her grandmother had taught her to read the signs that others missed, and those signs painted a clear picture. Silver poisoning, probably from a blade wound that had been cleaned and bandaged before anyone realized the weapon was tainted. The poison would have entered his bloodstream immediately, but its effects developed slowly, mimicking infection, while actually attacking his wolf from within. Vera pulled the moonflower petals from her bag and began crushing them between her palms. The flowers released their healing essence when bruised, creating a paste that could draw poisons from infected wounds. Her grandmother had used this treatment only once, on a young wolf who'd been accidentally cut by a silver hunting knife. "What are you doing here?" The voice cut through the silence like a blade. Vera spun around, her heart nearly stopping as she saw the Alpha King's storm-gray eyes fixed on her face. He was awake, watching her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. I'm sorry, Your Majesty." Vera dropped into a clumsy curtsy, spilling half the crushed petals onto the floor. "I didn't mean to disturb you. Answer my question." His voice was weak but still carried absolute authority. "What are you doing in my healing chamber?" Vera's mouth went dry. How could she explain her suspicions without sounding like a mad Omega who'd read too many old books? How could she convince him that she knew more about his condition than the royal physician and head healer combined? "You're dying," she whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "Not from infection or fever, but from something much worse. Something that Marcus and Dr. Thornfield don't recognize." The Alpha King's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Explain." "Silver poisoning." Vera forced herself to meet his gaze, even though every fiber of her being screamed at her to look away. "Someone used a tainted blade on you. The wound may have healed on the surface, but the poison is still spreading through your system." For a long moment, the Alpha King said nothing. He studied her face as if trying to read her thoughts, his powerful presence filling the room like storm clouds before lightning strikes. Finally, he spoke. "And I suppose you have a cure?" Damon's laugh sounded like breaking glass in the cold stone hallway. The torches on the walls flickered as if they were scared too. Vera's heart hammered so hard she thought it might jump right out of her chest. But she didn't back down. She had to make him understand before it was too late. "You think I'm lying?" she whispered, her voice shaking but her eyes steady. "Look at your hands, Your Majesty. Really look." The Alpha King raised his powerful hands, and for the first time, he saw what she had been seeing for days. Tiny black lines ran under his skin like dark rivers. They started at his knuckles and crawled up toward his wrists like poisonous spiders. "What is this?" His voice dropped to a growl that made the castle guards at the far end of the hall step back. "Silver poison," Vera said, pulling a small glass bottle from her healing bag. The liquid inside glowed pale blue like moonlight on water. "Someone put silver dust on the blade that cut you last week. Your body closed the wound, but the poison stayed inside. It's eating your wolf spirit from the inside out." Damon stared at the black lines spreading across his skin. His face went pale as fresh snow. "How long do I have?" 3 days, maybe 4 if you're strong." Vera's hands trembled as she uncorked the bottle. "But only if we start treatment right now. Why should I trust you?" He stepped closer, his massive shadow covering her like a dark blanket. "You're just an Omega, no one special. Why would you know something the royal doctor doesn't?" The words stung like bee stings, but Vera lifted her chin. Because I'm the only one who bothered to really smell you. Everyone else was too busy bowing and scraping to notice you were dying. Thunder crashed outside the castle windows. Rain began to pound against the glass like angry fists. The storm had finally arrived, just like Vera knew it would. She could feel it in her bones, the same way she could feel the poison killing the king. My grandmother taught me about silver poisoning, she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. She said the old packs used to use it in wars, before it was banned. She said only healers who worked with dangerous herbs would know how to cure it. And you work with dangerous herbs? Damon's eyebrows went up. Every day. Vera nodded toward the gardens beyond the windows. Wolfsbane, nightshade, deathcap mushrooms. You can't heal without understanding poison first. The king was quiet for a long moment. The only sounds were thunder and rain, and the distant voices of guards changing shifts. Finally, he spoke. What do you need me to do? Vera's heart jumped with hope, but she kept her voice calm and professional. Drink this. It tastes terrible, but it will slow the poison down. Then we need to go to my workshop. I have tools there that can draw the silver out of your blood. Damon took the bottle and stared at the glowing liquid inside. If you're wrong about this, little Omega, it won't matter that you tried to help. My advisors will have you thrown in the dungeons. If I'm wrong, you'll be dead in 3 days anyway, Vera shot back. What do you have to lose? For the first time since she'd known him, the Alpha King smiled. Not a royal smile or a political smile, but a real one that reached his gray eyes and made them sparkle like stars. Nothing at all, he said, and drank the entire bottle in one gulp. His face twisted like he'd bitten into a lemon, and he coughed hard enough to shake the walls. But the black lines on his hands stopped moving. The poison was slowing down. Now what? He asked, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Now we go to my workshop, and I show you just how dangerous a nobody Omega can be when she puts her mind to it. As they walked through the castle halls together, Vera noticed something strange. The servants and guards they passed looked shocked to see their king walking next to her. Not just surprised, but actually frightened, like they were seeing something impossible. Your Majesty, she said quietly, when was the last time you trusted someone outside your inner circle? Damon was quiet for so long that Vera thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, I can't remember. That's when Vera realized the truth. Saving the king's life was just the beginning. Someone had poisoned him with a banned substance, which meant someone close to him wanted him dead. Someone who knew the old laws and the old ways of killing. Someone who was probably watching them right now. The workshop door exploded inward like it had been hit by lightning. Vera jerked awake from her chair beside the healing table, her heart jumping into her throat. Damon rolled off the table where she'd been treating him, landing in a crouch that looked more wolf than man. 2 figures dressed in black burst through the doorway. Their faces were covered with dark masks, but Vera could see their eyes glowing yellow in the candlelight. Werewolves. And they were here to kill. Stay behind me, Damon growled, but he swayed on his feet. The treatment had weakened him more than he wanted to admit. The first attacker swung a silver blade at the king's chest. Damon dodged, but barely. The sword whistled past his ribs, so close it cut through his shirt. Silver sparks flew where the blade hit the stone wall. Vera's wolf spirit surged inside her chest, hot and fierce, and completely unexpected. She'd never been a fighter, never even raised her voice in anger. But watching someone try to murder her patient lit a fire in her belly that burned brighter than the sun. The second attacker circled around, trying to get behind Damon while he fought the first one. The king was strong, but the silver poison had made him slow. He couldn't fight 2 enemies at once, not like this. Vera grabbed a silver knife from her herb-cutting table. Her grandmother had taught her that healers needed to know exactly where to cut to save a life. But cutting to save meant she also knew exactly where to cut to end one. The second attacker raised his sword above Damon's back, ready to strike the killing blow. Vera didn't think. She just moved. Her knife flew through the air like a silver bird and buried itself in the pressure point at the base of the attacker's neck. He dropped like a stone, his sword clattering across the floor. The first attacker spun toward her, his yellow eyes wide with shock and fury. You dare interfere, Omega? She dares to protect her king. Damon snarled and slammed the man against the workshop wall so hard the stone cracked. The attacker's mask fell away, revealing a face Vera didn't recognize. Who sent you? Damon demanded, his hand around the man's throat. The attacker just smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp and too white. You're already dead, false king. The poison will finish what we started. Wrong, Vera said, holding up an empty glass bottle that had been full of silver antidote just hours before. I already cured him. The smile fell off the attacker's face like melting snow. Impossible, he wheezed. No one knows how to cure silver poisoning. The knowledge was lost centuries ago. Not lost, Vera said quietly. Hidden. Passed down from grandmother to granddaughter in families that remembered the old ways. Damon's grip tightened. Who? Sent. You. But the attacker bit down hard on something hidden in his mouth. White foam bubbled from his lips, and his body went limp. Poison pill. He'd rather die than reveal his master. The king dropped the dead man and turned to Vera. Are you hurt? She shook her head, but her hands were trembling like leaves in a storm. I don't usually. Kill people? Damon's voice was gentle now, not the growl of a moment before. Neither do I, if I can help it. But sometimes the world gives us no choice. He walked over to where she stood, her back pressed against the herb shelves. That was an incredibly brave thing you just did. And incredibly stupid. Stupid? Vera's eyebrows shot up. I saved your life. You put yourself in danger to save mine, he corrected. That's the definition of stupid bravery. But he was smiling when he said it, and his hand was warm when he touched her cheek. Thank you, little healer. I owe you a debt I can never repay. You don't owe me anything, Vera said, but her cheek tingled where his fingers touched it. I'm just doing my job. Your job doesn't include fighting assassins. Maybe it should. She looked down at the two dead men on her workshop floor. These weren't random killers, were they? Someone hired them. Someone who knew exactly when you'd be weakest. Damon's face went dark as a storm cloud. Someone who knew about the silver poisoning. Someone who knew I was being treated. Someone close to you, Vera whispered. They stared at each other in the flickering candlelight, both thinking the same terrible thought. The king had a traitor in his inner circle. Someone he trusted had tried to have him murdered. And now that same someone knew that Vera had saved his life. You're not safe here anymore, Damon said quietly. They'll come for you next. Let them come, Vera said, surprising herself with how fierce she sounded. I'm not hiding from anyone. But deep down, she knew he was right. She'd stepped out of the shadows now, and there was no going back. The question was, how many more people would try to kill them before they figured out who was behind it all? The crash of breaking glass shattered the peaceful morning as Vera's healing workspace erupted into chaos. 3 masked wolves burst through the windows, their silver claws gleaming in the early sunlight like deadly promises. But these weren't here for the Alpha King. Their hungry eyes were locked on her. The little healer thinks she's clever, one snarled, his voice muffled behind black cloth. Time to silence that sharp tongue forever. Vera's heart hammered against her ribs as she backed toward her supply cabinet. Her fingers closed around a vial of concentrated wolfsbane extract deadly to most wolves. But she'd built immunity through years of careful exposure. The attackers spread out like hunting wolves, cutting off her escape routes with practiced precision. You made a mistake healing the king, the largest one growled. Some wounds are meant to stay open. She threw the wolfsbane directly into his eyes. His scream of pain echoed off the stone walls as he clawed at his face, temporarily blinded. The other two hesitated just long enough for Vera to grab her silver-lined throwing knives, tools she'd never thought she'd use as weapons. I make medicine, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. But I know exactly where every pressure point lies. The first knife found its mark in the second attacker's shoulder, sending him stumbling backward. But the third wolf was already moving, faster than she'd expected. His claws raked across her arm, drawing blood that smelled of fear and determination mixed together. That's when Damon's roar shook dust from the ceiling beams. The Alpha King burst through the doorway like a force of nature, his partially shifted form radiating deadly fury. His eyes blazed gold with protective rage as he took in the scene, Vera bleeding, surrounded by enemies in her own sanctuary. "You dare touch what's mine?" His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The remaining attackers tried to flee, but Damon moved with the lethal grace of an apex predator. Within moments, 2 lay unconscious on the floor while the 3rd cowered against the wall. "Please," the survivor whimpered. "We were just following orders." "Whose orders?" Damon's claws extended fully, pressing against the wolf's throat. But Vera stepped forward, her healer's instincts overriding her fear. "Wait, look at his neck." A small brand marked the attacker's skin, a symbol she recognized from her grandmother's old books. The mark of wolves who'd been magically bound to serve someone else against their will. "They're not acting freely," she realized. "Someone's controlling them." Damon's expression shifted from rage to calculating coldness. "Then we're going to find out who's pulling the strings." As they bound the controlled wolves with silver-lined rope, Vera noticed something that made her blood run cold. The brand on their necks was still fresh, probably less than a day old. Someone had specifically created these servants just to attack her. "They knew I was getting close to something," she murmured, examining her torn sleeve. "But close to what?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Hidden beneath the broken glass, she found a small piece of parchment that one attacker must have dropped. The writing was in code, but her grandmother had taught her to read the old pack languages. "It's not just about killing you," Damon said, translating the message over her shoulder. "They want to capture you alive. Someone needs your healing knowledge for something specific." A chill ran down Vera's spine. What if the silver poisoning wasn't meant to kill you quickly? What if it was designed to keep you weak while someone gathered information about the cure? They stared at each other as the pieces clicked into place. The attacks, the precise timing, the need for a healer who understood silver extraction. Someone was playing a much longer game than they'd realized. "We need to check the other healers in neighboring packs," Vera said urgently. "If someone's collecting knowledge about silver poisoning cures, I might not be the first one they've targeted." Damon nodded grimly. "And we need to figure out why they need that knowledge." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining with gentle strength. "Because whatever they're planning, it's bigger than just one assassination attempt." As if summoned by their words, a raven landed on the broken windowsill. Tied to its leg was another message, this one bearing the royal seal of a neighboring pack. Vera's hands shook as she read the contents aloud. 3 healers have gone missing in the past month. All experts in rare poisons and their cures, all taken alive. The morning sunlight suddenly felt cold against their skin. Whatever conspiracy they'd uncovered was spreading far beyond their pack's borders, and Vera's unique skills had made her a target in a war she was only beginning to understand. The emergency pack meeting felt like walking into a den of sleeping predators who might wake up hungry. Vera stood beside Damon in the Great Hall, acutely aware of every suspicious glance and whispered comment from the assembled wolves. The evidence they'd gathered over the past week lay spread across the massive oak table like pieces of a deadly puzzle. "You're asking us to believe that someone in this very room is a traitor?" Counselor Marcus said, his weathered face showing deep skepticism. "Based on the word of an Omega who's been alone with our Alpha for weeks." "Based on evidence," Vera corrected, keeping her voice calm despite the insult. "The controlled wolves, the missing healers, the coordinated attacks. This isn't random violence." Elder Sarah leaned forward, her silver hair catching the firelight. "Show us what you found, child. But remember, accusations have consequences." Vera nodded and began laying out the proof they'd collected. Maps showing the locations of missing healers, samples of the magical binding agent used on the controlled attackers, and most damning of all, financial records they'd discovered hidden in the pack's archives. "Someone has been paying enormous sums to black market magic dealers," she explained. "The transaction started 3 months ago, right around the time the Alpha King's missions began taking him near silver mines." "Convenient timing," muttered Counselor Elena, but her eyes showed interest rather than dismissal. Damon stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. The attacks on Vera weren't random. They were surgical strikes designed to either kill or capture the one healer who could identify and treat silver poisoning. "But why?" asked Beta Thomas, the pack's second in command. "What's the point of keeping you weak with poison?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Young Jimmy, barely 18 and fresh from his first shift, raised his hand nervously. Begging your pardon, but I might know something about that. Every head turned toward him. The boy's face flushed red under the attention, but he pressed on bravely. My cousin works in the mines 2 territories over. He said they've been finding weird silver deposits lately. Not regular silver, something that glows blue in moonlight and makes wolves sick just from being near it. Vera felt her blood turn to ice. Blue silver. I've read about it in my grandmother's journals. It's incredibly rare and 10 times more toxic than regular silver. And someone's been mining it, Demon concluded grimly, probably planning to weaponize it on a massive scale. The room erupted in concerned murmurs, but Vera's attention was caught by something else entirely. Counselor Marcus had gone very still, his hands pressed flat against the table in a way that looked casual but felt wrong. Marcus, she said quietly, you've been unusually silent. All eyes turned to the older wolf. His composed mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. I've been listening, as any good council member should, he replied smoothly. Though I must say, this all sounds rather far-fetched. Does it? Vera pulled out one final piece of evidence, a letter she'd found hidden in Marcus's office earlier that day. Because this correspondence suggests you've been very interested in blue silver for quite some time. The silence that followed was broken only by the crackling of the fire. Marcus's hand moved slowly toward his ceremonial dagger, but Damon was faster. In one fluid motion, the Alpha King had him pinned against the wall. How long? Damon's voice was deadly quiet. How long have you been selling out your own pack? Marcus laughed bitterly. You think this is about money? About power? You naive fool. The world is changing, and packs like ours are going extinct. I was trying to save us. By poisoning our alpha and kidnapping healers? Elder Sarah's voice shook with outrage. By joining the winning side before it's too late, Marcus snarled. The Coalition has resources you can't imagine. They promised to spare our pack if we cooperated. The Coalition? Vera breathed. She'd heard whispers of this group of wolves who believed the old pack structure was outdated and wanted to create a new order based on magical power instead of traditional hierarchy. They need healers who can work with blue silver, Marcus continued, seemingly past caring about consequences. Because regular silver is child's play compared to what they're planning. They're going to reshape the entire wolf world. Beta Thomas stepped forward, his face grim. And you thought betraying your alpha was the path to survival? I thought ensuring our pack's future was worth more than one wolf's life, Marcus shot back. Even an alpha's. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Vera felt sick, thinking about all the times Marcus had been present during Damon's treatment. All the opportunities he'd had to sabotage the healing process or report their progress to his Coalition contacts. Where are the missing healers? She demanded. Are they still alive? Marcus's silence was answer enough. The weight of those lost lives settled over the room like a heavy blanket, making everyone understand the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just about their pack anymore. It was about a war most wolves didn't even know was being fought, and they just discovered they were on the front lines. The silver chains around Vera's wrists burned like ice as she hung in the dungeon beneath the castle. 3 days had passed since Counselor Thorne's allies had captured her during the failed assassination attempt. 3 days of wondering if Damon was alive or dead. Still protecting your precious king? Sneered Marcus, Thorne's nephew, as he entered her cell. The young wolf's eyes glowed yellow in the torchlight. He's probably forgotten about you already. That's what alphas do with broken toys. Vera lifted her head, meeting his gaze without flinching. If he's forgotten me, then why are you still keeping me alive? Marcus's smile faltered. Outside, footsteps echoed through the stone corridors. Heavy boots, multiple sets. The rescue party was coming. Because, Marcus whispered, pulling out a silver dagger, dead Omegas tell no tales. But before he could strike, the cell door exploded inward. Damon filled the doorway like thunder made flesh, his eyes blazing with fury that made the air itself tremble. Behind him stood Captain Riley and 6 of the pack's strongest warriors. Step away from her. Damon's voice was deadly quiet. Now. Marcus pressed the blade against Vera's throat. One more step and she dies. You heard her, Damon said, his wolf rising to the surface. And I'll make sure you live long enough to regret every breath. Vera felt the silver burn deeper into her skin, but she forced herself to stay calm. Damon, the poison? Are you taking the treatments? Every day, he replied, never taking his eyes off Marcus. Just like you taught me. Good, she breathed. Then louder. The antidote formula is hidden in my grandmother's journal. Page 47. If something happens to me, nothing's happening to you. Damon took a careful step forward. Because you're coming home. Marcus laughed harshly. Home? You think this pack will ever truly accept her? She's nobody. Nothing. A healer who got lucky. She's everything. Damon's voice carried through the dungeon like a promise. And she's mine. In that moment, Vera saw something shift in her mate's expression. Not just love, but recognition. Complete, absolute recognition of who she was and what she meant to him. She saved my life, Damon continued, his voice growing stronger. She uncovered your uncle's betrayal. She's shown more courage in 1 week than you've shown in your entire miserable existence. Pretty words won't. Vera moved faster than anyone expected. Years of working with dangerous herbs had taught her precision, and she used it now. Her elbow drove into Marcus's ribs as she twisted away from the blade. The dagger clattered to the stone floor. Damon was on Marcus before the young wolf could recover. The fight was over in seconds. Captain Riley quickly unlocked Vera's chains. My lady, are you hurt? I'm fine, she said, though her wrists were raw and bleeding. But we need to move fast. Thorn has supporters throughout the castle. This was just the beginning. Damon pulled her into his arms, careful of her injuries. I thought I'd lost you. Never, she whispered against his chest. I told you once we're in this together. They made their way through the castle corridors, moving swiftly but quietly. The rebellion was larger than they'd realized. Thorn had spent months turning wolves against their king, using fear and old prejudices as weapons. The Great Hall, Captain Riley reported through their mind link. Thorn's gathered his supporters there, maybe 30 wolves. And our loyal forces? Damon asked. 60, my lord. But they're scattered throughout the territory. Vera touched Damon's arm. We don't need to fight them all. We just need to show the pack who Thorn really is. What do you mean? She pulled a small vial from her hidden pocket. Remember the silver-stained cloth I showed the council? I kept some of Thorn's blood from when he cut himself on his own blade. Damon's eyes widened with understanding. Blood magic. You can prove the silver poisoning came from him. More than that, I can show everyone exactly what he did to you. The spell will project his memories for all to see. They reached the Great Hall doors. Inside, angry voices argued about loyalty, tradition, and the proper order of things. Thorn's voice rose above the rest. The king has been weakened by his association with that Omega. She's made him soft, vulnerable. This is not the strong leadership our pack needs. Damon squeezed Vera's hand. Ready? She nodded. Let's show them the truth. The doors burst open. Damon strode into the hall with Vera at his side. No longer the hidden healer, but standing proud as his equal. The arguing stopped immediately. Counselor Thorn, Damon's voice carried to every corner of the room. I believe we have unfinished business. Thorn's face went pale, but he rallied quickly. Guards, arrest the Omega for treason! But none of the wolves moved. They were all watching Vera as she raised the vial high above her head. This contains your blood, Counselor, she announced clearly. Blood that will show everyone present exactly how you poisoned your king with silver. Blood magic is forbidden. So is attempted murder of your alpha, Vera replied calmly. Shall we see which crime the pack finds more disturbing? She crushed the vial against the stone floor. Silver light erupted from the broken glass, swirling upward until it formed images in the air above their heads. The entire hall watched in stunned silence as Thorn's own memories played out like a movie. The secret meetings with rival pack leaders, the careful preparation of the silver-laced blade, the moment he struck Damon during what was supposed to be a training exercise. When the images faded, the silence in the hall was deafening. Thorn made one last desperate attempt. She's manipulating the magic, making it show lies. But Elder Patricia stepped forward from the crowd. Blood magic cannot lie, counselor. We all know this. One by one, the wolves who had supported Thorn began backing away from him. The truth was too clear to deny. The penalty for attempting to murder your alpha, Elder Patricia continued, is exile from the pack, forever. Thorn's supporters quickly declared their renewed loyalty to Damon. Within minutes, the rebellion was over. As the hall began to empty, Elder Patricia approached Vera. That was impressive magic, young healer. Where did you learn such advanced techniques? My grandmother taught me many things, Vera replied quietly, including that sometimes the truth needs help revealing itself. Damon wrapped his arm around her shoulders. The pack owes you a debt that can never be repaid. The pack owes me nothing, Vera said, looking around the hall where she'd been dismissed and ignored for so many years. But respect would be nice. Elder Patricia smiled. I think you'll find that respect is no longer in question, my dear. 6 months later, Queen Vera stood on the balcony, overlooking the pack's main square, watching the harvest festival preparations below. The autumn air carried the scent of roasting meat and fresh bread, mixed with the laughter of cubs playing between the market stalls. The council meeting ran long again, Damon said, joining her at the railing. Elder Patricia thinks we should expand the healer training program to 3 more territories. Vera smiled, her hand moving instinctively to rest on her growing belly. 3 more? That's ambitious. Your methods saved more lives this year than we've saved in the past 5 combined, he pointed out. The other packs are starting to take notice. Below them, a group of young wolves was setting up tables for the feast. Vera recognized most of them wolves, who had once looked right through her, now waved respectfully when they saw her watching. Do you ever miss it? Damon asked softly. The quiet life in the herb garden? Sometimes, she admitted, but I've learned something important about quiet lives. What's that? They're not always the same as peaceful ones. She leaned against his chest, feeling their baby kick in response to his nearness. I was hiding before, from responsibility, from my own abilities, from the possibility that I might matter. A commotion in the square caught their attention. Captain Riley was approaching with a woman. Vera didn't recognize a stranger, carrying the scent of distant mountains and pine forests. My lord, my lady, Riley called up to them. We have a visitor. She says she's here about the healer training program. The woman stepped forward, tilting her head back to meet Vera's eyes. She was older, maybe 50, with silver-streaked hair and the confident bearing of someone used to being listened to. Queen Vera, the woman called. My name is Diana Ravencrest. I'm the head healer for the Northern Mountain Pack. We've heard remarkable things about your work. Damon and Vera exchanged glances. The Northern Mountain Pack was notoriously independent, rarely seeking help from other territories. They made their way down to the square, where Diana waited with obvious impatience. Your reputation precedes you, Queen Vera, Diana said without preamble. We have a situation, a sickness that's affecting our strongest warriors. Our healers are stumped. What kind of sickness? Vera asked, immediately shifting into her professional mindset. Weakness, fever, loss of connection to their wolves. It started 3 weeks ago and it's spreading. Diana's expression was grim. We've lost 2 warriors already. Vera felt Damon tense beside her. That sounds like silver poisoning, she finished. But a different type than what affected the king. This sounds like it's being delivered through food or water. Diana nodded grimly. That's what we suspected, but we can't find the source, and we don't know how to treat it. I'll need to see the affected wolves, Vera said immediately, and test your water sources, food supplies. Vera, Damon interrupted gently, you're 6 months pregnant. Travel to the Northern Territory isn't... The Northern Territory is a 3-day journey through dangerous mountain passes, she acknowledged. Which is why you're coming with me. Diana raised an eyebrow. Your king would leave his own territory for this? My king, Vera said firmly, goes where his queen goes, and his queen is needed to save lives. Damon sighed, but she could see the pride in his eyes. I suppose I can't argue with that logic. You could try, Vera said with a grin, but you'd lose. Diana smiled for the first time since arriving. I can see why your pack prospers under your joint leadership. As they discussed travel plans and medical supplies, Vera felt a familiar sensation, that moment when pieces of a puzzle began clicking into place. "Diana," she said suddenly, "have there been any new wolves in your territory recently? Traitors, messengers, anyone from outside your pack?" "Actually, yes. A group of merchants from the Eastern Valley arrived about a month ago. They've been selling supplies and—" Diana's eyes widened. "You think they're responsible?" "I think someone is systematically trying to weaken pack leadership," Vera replied. "First Damon, now your warriors. If I'm right, other packs might be affected too." Damon's expression hardened. "A coordinated attack on multiple territories. We need to send messages to our allied packs immediately," Vera decided, warning them to check for signs of poisoning and to be suspicious of any new arrivals. "And we need to catch whoever's doing this before they strike again," Damon added. Diana looked between them with growing respect. "You really do think like a team. We've learned that we're stronger together," Vera said, taking Damon's hand. "It's a lesson that extends beyond just the two of us." As the sun set over the festival preparations, messengers rode out in 6 directions, carrying warnings to allied packs. The northern mountain situation would require careful handling, but Vera felt confident they could solve it. "One more adventure before the baby arrives," she mused as they walked back toward the castle. "Hopefully a less dangerous one than our last few adventures," Damon said dryly. Vera laughed. Where would be the fun in that? That night, as they lay in bed planning their journey, Vera reflected on how much had changed since that morning in the herb garden, when she'd first noticed something wrong with her king's scent. She'd saved his life, yes, but more than that, she'd discovered her own strength, her own worth, her own ability to lead. She was no longer the shy Omega who hid among the healing herbs. She was Queen Vera Stoneclaw, healer and protector, mate to the Alpha King, and mother to the future heir. She was exactly who she was meant to be. And their story was just beginning.